The Centresteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners.
Welcome to the 18th episode of the Centresteer Podcast. It is the September show, but we're recording in October, early October. It is the 5th of October, and I'm in Pittsburgh, actually near Pittsburgh. We had originally recorded this episode in the UK when I was in Milton Keynes, right after the Land Rover Owners event with Steve, who's one of our regular panelists. And as happens with podcasting, you're eventually going to lose a show, and I lost the show. So in creating some of the our field reports, of which there are 4 currently, right after that past weekend in events, I mistakenly overwrote the original episode that we had recorded when I was in Milton Keynes. So imagine, we'll recreate this in your mind. Steve and I are sitting next to each other in the bed and breakfast, and we're in the common room, which has a kitchen table. And Vicky's wonderful. If you're ever in the Milton Keynes area, you want in Southbourne, you want to stay at the Cherry Tree Bed and Breakfast. Vicky's wonderful. Cherry Tree has a website, and so we're sitting there, and it's 9:00 at night on a Sunday, and we were Skyping back to the United States, and we're recording and having a good time. So that was the stage, and I mistakenly overwrote that file.
You sure it wasn't seized by customs?
So I apologize for that. We're going to recreate that episode and with some new content. And Steve, unfortunately, couldn't join us for this episode. So he told me I could affect a British accent, but I'm not going to do that. Sitting across from me is Harold, and on Skype joining us from Vermont is Morgan. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hey.
Hello.
So first up is the news, and I found this article interesting. The toughest cars to negotiate in the United States, and the number one vehicle to negotiate. And I don't know around the world if other countries do it this way, but in the United States, the price of the car is not what you're paying for the price of the car. You can buy sticker if you want, but that's probably not the smartest move. There are dealerships, which is where you go to buy a car in the United States, and you can negotiate with them. There are some that have the sticker price, and that's what you pay. But typically, you go and you negotiate with the car salesman and the sales team. And the one that they do not discount the number. There was a number. I think there were 10 of them that they said that they are cars on a discount. They're in such demand that they can command the price above sticker. And the number one is a Land Rover Range Rover Sport, and it stickers from $62,000 to $92,000, and it is selling at 2.38% above sticker price. So while that's bad if you want to go buy a new one, it's good because it shows that there's a strong demand for the Land Rover brand.
Now, do they still have quite a waiting list for those?
That's a good question. I don't see that was in this article, but I have not heard that there's a waiting list for the Sport. I think there's a waiting.
Quite often, the presence of a waiting list will drive the bidding war up on the price, if you will.
One of the things we'll talk about a little more later is the factory tour that I did. I seem to recall a comment that they could probably handle more demand, but I think they're purposely not handling all the demand. I think that's to keep a strong demand. They're not, they're controlling supply. Excuse me. They're not managing all the supply so that demand can stay strong.
That's what they call supply side economics, is it not?
Well, they can get away with it, right? And I think they're putting out a good product and people are buying it. And I think if they put out 10 less cars a month and keeps prices up, no one. I don't think anybody's upset. I'm not sure what the number is, they may not in fact be doing that, but I get that impression. As a good example, and again, we should probably talk about this a little more hopefully later. They only produce 75 Defenders a day, and I'm sure they could ramp up more. And the reason I say that is that's one shift, Monday through Friday. They could, potentially do 2 more shifts.
They could add shifts, definitely. But the fact remains the Defender is a very labor-intensive vehicle because of its design being so old.
Very true.
It was designed long before robots existed to build vehicles.
Right. So the point is that's a car that it shows that the brand is still in demand and things are going well. I think that's what that shows. Next up is the Land Rover Discovery Sport, which is the replacement for the Freelander, the LR2 here in the United States. And it is targeting what the article at Autoblog says that they are targeting the luxury CUV market with some off-road chops and room for 7. That's the article that they have put out there. And it's going to be competitively priced, I think, starting at $38,000 here in the United States. And I'm sure it'll quickly go up from there. But at least, usually, having seen Land Rover marketing in the past, they usually package that with a pretty good amount of stuff. I think you'll get a good vehicle at I think a good price for what that vehicle is and what's supposed to be.
Right. If they're positioning with the other premium CUVs, that's pretty competitive. If they're trying to compete with the mainstream CUVs, they're going to be way overpriced. But
it's not.
I think that may have been their problem with the Freelander. They didn't position it properly against the right competition. But then again, there wasn't as much competition in that segment back then. Now there are more of the small premium CUVs.
Well, I would agree generally with you. My one thing about the Freelander, agreeing with you, but expanding upon that, the Freelander itself, I don't think was a luxury vehicle to begin with. And it was, so that made it more difficult, even if when they did try to make it a kind of a luxury vehicle here, it didn't come across that way.
Well, I agree with you totally there. I think the vehicle itself was not upscale enough to drive a new segment, and it wasn't cheap enough to compete with the other vehicles in its segment.
Absolutely, yeah. And when they went to the LR2, which would be the Freelander 2, it had moved upscale and it felt a little more luxury, but
it had more gadgets on board,
yeah.
and
I think the feel, the materials, and the layout and things that but
arguably it was better built too.
Oh, clearly, yes. I think the rear main seal actually worked.
Well, that would be the first for a Land Rover, perhaps.
At least for the Freelander, and I think the windscreen actually didn't crack just because you turned on the heated windscreen.
Well, that's a plus.
4 windscreens. I paid for 4 windscreens. That's how many I went through. Unbelievable.
One would think to keep their finger off the heater switch after about 3.
It was I did. I think after 3, I gave up at that point. Yeah, but anyways, so the article on Autoblog was, I think, a good review. They seemed to generally enjoy the vehicle and thought it fit well, and it's going to fit, as part of kind of like a mate to the Evoque, in the sense that, the Evoque is a part of the Range Rover family, but it's the kind of baby, and this is going to also be the baby of the Discovery family. And so,
I like the fact that since they're doing the whole family thing, that they've got this aligned there, so that the Freelander isn't really just sort of left out hanging on its own, and it makes more sense that it can identify with the Disco line.
I think the one negative thing in the article was that while it has 7 passenger seating, I think you'd have to be like a 4-year-old child in order to enjoy the rear seats, the third row.
Or missing their legs or something. Yes, you'd have to be pretty small. I think even the middle seats might be a little bit cramped as well, but I could be wrong.
I think that second row doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, not too bad, but I mean, I haven't seen one in person, but it seems a little crowded.
Well, the hoods, the interesting thing, in looking a lot, especially the mid to rear section, it looks a lot like the Evoque, and so that slants down. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned about headroom space in there, especially when they always try to do that stadium seating.
Right.
Are they going to lose stadium seating? That's something I wasn't sure of.
Or the passenger is going to have to be shorter.
Yes.
Like the back seat in an Audi TT.
There's a back seat?
Yes, there is. And if you're taller than 3'1", you get hit in the head when they close the hatch.
So moving on with the the Discovery Sport, that was officially debuted in Paris, I think this past week, if I remember correctly. And they had a nice promotional video, and they did a neat job of... And I've said that if you haven't chance to check out the video, you should do it. It was a minute long. It's a little introductory thing. And I still think their Land Rover marketing does a great job of just doing some cool stuff and showing off the vehicle. So what they did was they had a barge, floated it down the Seine in Paris, and they had a couple of Discovery Sports and drove them around on the barge, and had a water crossing on the barge, and actually plowed through and went through the water crossing. And that was pretty cool. There was a nice little, not a bow wake, mind you, but it was a nice little splash. I mean, it wasn't a lot of water, but the fact that you did that, I think that's cool. And then they had a model. I don't even know who she was, but they had a model there, and they had giant Wellington boots on the barge, and one of them was in Union Jack livery. So the Range Rover, the Discovery Sport, is officially debuted. I think you can buy one starting in 2015.
There's several jokes in there somewhere. They're not flowing.
Further, Car magazine out of the UK had a nice article talking about confirming what we had heard, and this article came out before the Discovery Sport was officially debuted, but they kind of confirmed for us this whole family notion that Land Rover has come up with. So there's going to be the Range Rover family, which includes the Evoque. There's going to be the Discovery family, which includes the Sport, the Freelander replacement, and they're going to have a Defender family, which potentially, hopefully, will come to the United States in some fashion. And what that will look like, obviously, no one knows, but very few people know.
Mind you, the Defender's already sort of a family. If you consider all the different body configurations and the different wheelbases you can order, it's just now it's maybe a little more formalized in terms of how they define it. That's
a good point. The Defender really is a family, and I don't think folks, unless you think about it, it really comes to mind, because there is the 130, there's the 110, there's the 90, and then, as you said, you can get a station wagon, you can get a pickup, you can get the commercial one, which is just the cab and nothing else. And
I think it's a great decision to move to the families for their other more upscale, less modular models, for sure.
Well, but they're going to do that with the Defender apparently too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I wonder.
We'll have to see what the Defender is.
Right, and I was going to say that may or may not be foreshadowing the fact that if the vehicle itself is less modular than it used to be, you might need actual separate models to define all the different utilities that you have now with the one.
Yeah, and obviously at this point, it's very likely it is not going to be very modular at all. Well, it's not going to be the DC-100, but it's not going to be the Defender we know and love.
Well, it won't be as modular in terms of being able to bolt and unbolt the bulkheads, but as far as, roofs might still be detachable. You might still be able to do some things like that. Again, we're speculating, but it's still possible to have some modularity.
Well, and I think this article points to that, because different markets have different needs. The one thing they mentioned here is in the Middle East, they like really big vehicles, and whereas other markets like smaller vehicles, so that you could have a 90 and then have a 110 or have a 130 and still have those, but in a modern vehicle that meets safety and emission requirements throughout the world. And I think that's what you're going to.
Right.
It's going to happen.
Yep.
So that is the family of vehicles that have come out. And finally in the news, we have a nice update. Harold will let us know about the seized, Homeland Security has seized Defenders, which I think you can go check our past podcasts about. And there's some good news, Harold.
Yes. I think at our last podcast, we had reported that 6 trucks had been returned. 6 of the trucks that had been seized had been returned, and in fact, we're staring at a news story here that John has pulled up with a nice picture of one of them being reunited with their owners. Since that podcast, I think about 3 weeks ago, the government has dismissed their case against 8 more trucks, so now that's 14 in total that are off the list, if you will. These 8 were actually never seized, but the government has dismissed their case against them without picking them up, without taking them from their owners. But at least their owners can breathe a little calmer now.
Was that because the VINs were incorrect?
From what I understand, these particular trucks, the government was unable to locate them within the duration of the warrant and had to dismiss their case because their time ran out.
Well, some of the ones that returned, my understanding, if I remember correctly, or maybe we talked about this the last time.
The first 6 were because of erroneous VIN decoding.
Because the VIN numbers were, the number on the truck was correct, but the pre part of the VIN, that it's not the serial number, if you will, that's the the numerical one. That part was different because they've changed over the years.
Well, what happened was that in the case of these 6, the government had asked Land Rover for verification on the VINs as to the year of manufacture, and Land Rover did not decode all 17 digits. They only decoded the final 6, which once you've made 1 million trucks, you have to start recycling those numbers. And so that if you just run those 6, it's pretty easy to come up with 2 trucks in 1983 and a year 2000, and that's what happened here. And they got confused, and once the full VIN was decoded, it was determined that these were, in fact, 1983 trucks and not 2000 trucks. And so they were legal, and they were returned.
And that's all due to the defender of the defenders, is that correct?
The defender of the defenders, William Hedrick, attorney at law.
Good for him. He's a good guy. He's still doing that pro bono, right?
He is still doing it pro bono, yes.
So defenders that were seized have been returned to their owners. That's some good news.
Some of them are. However, as I understand it, the government is digging in their heels on the remaining ones that they have a case against. There was a motion to dismiss that was filed. Of course, Will doing his job, and the government's response to him was 153 pages long, including a motion for summary judgment. Of course, it's, their posture. They want to get it over with too, but. It's
typical.
Yeah, but it's going to settle in, and these last trucks on the case, I think 23, 24, something like that, it's going to take a while to finish settling all that matter up.
Now, are there still other trucks that could be seized?
Potentially. In the investigators' report, I think they'd identified 55 or something like that. I don't have the data in front of me, unfortunately. I know it was 50. It was either 50 or 55 trucks that they thought were suspect, but the seizure warrant was only for 40 of them. So there are some additional trucks which, as I understand it, they may still be looking for and may do an amended warrant for those at some point. I'm not sure, and I really hate to speculate as to what the government is going to do or give them any ideas at this point.
Yes, because they're listening to this podcast for legal advice. Yeah.
Well, they monitor channels, and
they do.
And plus, if our listeners happen to talk about things they've heard on our show on a site that they are monitoring,
right?
You never know.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
Do have a couple listeners out there.
We do. Hi, Derek.
Hey, Derek. How's it going? Derek, I heard I saw your picture. You won the trophy at the St. Louis British Car Day. Congratulations.
Congratulations, he did. And I was, in putting my pictures up from my trip to the UK, I happened to type in, I was looking up information on the Pink Panther, and our podcast popped up as one of the, when you type in Land Rover Pink Panther, as one of the research results, like in the first page.
Because we mentioned them on our show.
Apparently, I should do it again and take a look. But yeah. So there's.
Well, that's a cool little trivia fact.
That was a little
very
little
cool.
Thing. Yeah, it was very exciting. So that is the news, and we will be back right after the M word.
Most young boys like to play with cars and trucks. For many, it becomes an obsession. Preston Tucker was certainly one of these. Growing up in suburban Detroit in the early 20th century, he learned to drive by the age of 11, and at 16 he was buying used cars, fixing them up, and selling them for a profit. He dropped out of high school to become an office boy at Cadillac. He ran a gas station, worked on the assembly line at Ford, and even joined the local police force just so he could drive around in the fast police cars. He also discovered he was very good at selling cars. He held sales positions at dealers around the country, and also for a time he was the regional sales manager for Pierce Arrow in Buffalo, New York. In the early 1930s, Tucker became addicted to the Indianapolis 500, and he would spend the month of May at the Speedway soaking up as much of the atmosphere as he could. This wasn't enough, so he moved to Indianapolis so he could be close to the action and get to know the engineers and designers of the race cars. It was during this time that Tucker met a man named Harry Miller. Miller was an engineer in the early days of auto racing. He ran a small machine shop specializing in carburetor production. This led to a lot of work on race cars, and eventually to designing and building his own race cars. Between 1923 and 28, a whopping 83% of the field at the Indianapolis 500 were Miller cars. All told, his cars won the big race 9 times, and his engines propelled 3 others to victory. Alas, Miller was a better engineer than businessman, and in 1933 he went bankrupt. Miller sold his engine business to his shop foreman, Fred Offenhauser, who continued the development of Miller's engine design. The Offenhauser engine would dominate at Indianapolis for decades and remain competitive into the 1980s. Tucker convinced Miller that they should join forces, and in 1935 they formed Miller and Tucker Incorporated. Their first job was to build 10 race cars for Henry Ford. Although the cars initially had a fatal flaw in the steering system, the problem was eventually resolved, and the cars remained competitive at Indy until 1948. In late 1937, Tucker was reading an article on the threat of war that seemed imminent in Europe. Suddenly he had an idea for a highly maneuverable armored combat vehicle. In 1939, after moving his family back to his native Michigan, he opened the Ypsilanti Machine and Tool Company in a remodeled barn behind his house. The plan was to develop various automotive products, including the combat car. The Dutch government was interested in a combat vehicle that could handle itself in their muddy terrain. With much collaboration from Harry Miller, work was begun on the combat car, which was nicknamed the Tucker Tiger. However, just as the prototypes were being completed in 1940, Germany invaded the Netherlands, and the Dutch were no longer in a position to buy Tucker's product. Tucker then attempted to sell it to the United States, but the War Department felt that the top speed of 115 miles per hour was way faster than an armored vehicle needed to go, and couldn't see any use for it. They did, however, really like the car's power-operated gun turret, and adopted its design for PT boats and landing craft, as well as the B-17 and B-29 bombers. On a more significant note, evaluating the Tucker combat car helped the War Department to examine all their vehicular needs and to clarify their specification for the lightweight, all-purpose, four-wheel drive vehicle that would come to be known as the Jeep. The development contract for this vehicle was awarded to the American Bantam Car Company of Butler, Pennsylvania. American Bantam was a small company that was originally founded in 1929 to manufacture the iconic Austin 7 under license. Despite the company's small size and precarious financial health, Bantam was awarded the contract because they were the only company able to deliver a prototype within the government's extremely tight schedule. In order to get the job done, Bantam hired some talented people to supplement their in-house engineering staff. Among these was the renowned race car and engine builder, Harry Miller. He, of course, brought with him many of the ideas he had developed for the Tucker combat car, most notably its suspension design. After the prototype design was finalized, the government awarded production orders to Ford and Willys Overland, as it was felt that American Bantam couldn't keep up with the orders. Fewer than 3,000 vehicles were built by Bantam, and over 640,000 were split between Willys and Ford. Meanwhile, after a brief venture in the aviation industry, Tucker embarked on his most famous venture, the Tucker Car Company. During World War II, there had been no new cars produced, and after the war, the big companies just went back to building the same cars they made in 1941. Tucker saw an opportunity to get the jump on the market by being the first to produce a truly modern car. He called it the car of tomorrow, today. Tucker's car was truly ahead of its time, and his company, staffed by a real who's who of talent, culled from his extensive contacts in the racing world and the automotive industry. Unfortunately, that was not enough. In order to raise enough startup capital, Tucker had to get creative, selling stock, signing up dealers, and even selling accessories for cars which had not yet been built. This attracted the attention of the Securities and Exchange Commission, who indicted Tucker and 6 executives of the company on several charges of fraud. There are those who feel this was politically motivated and perhaps even directed by the big 3 automakers in Detroit. Media coverage of the case had not been kind to Tucker, and although he was ultimately acquitted of all wrongdoing, the damage had been done. He was convicted in the court of popular opinion, and the Tucker Corporation was dead. Only 51 cars were built, and 47 remain today. Many words have been used to describe Preston Tucker: salesman, entrepreneur, visionary, optimist, and perhaps even huckster. I would like to add another label to that list:
given the chain of events leading to the development of the Jeep and how the Jeep inspired the first Land Rover, I would have to say that Preston Tucker is the godfather of the green oval.
And welcome back to the Centresteer podcast number 18. And we've decided this is series 2 because series 1 was destroyed. It was seized by DHS. So first up on the events is the British Weekend at Stowe. Is that right, Morgan?
British Invasion, they actually go by. It goes from September 19th to 21st this year. And the featured marquees were MG, Lotus, and Singer. Last year was actually Land Rover. It's a pretty big event for Vermont, held in Stowe, which is a very nice ski town, tourist town. On the Friday, they basically shut down the town center and only allow British vehicles in and have sort of a block party. And then they have the car show for the Saturday and the Sunday. I managed to get out there late on Saturday afternoon, and they have quite the spread of vehicles. I don't know the numbers for this year. Last year, there were over 675 British vehicles there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite a number of football fields, large, just aisles and aisles and aisles of.
Do you happen to notice the license number plates? Are they mostly Connecticut, or do they come from all other places?
They come from all over. So there were a lot of Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, quite a few New Jersey, some New York. So they come from all over.
I'd think they'd have to, because I don't think there's that many British vehicles in Vermont.
I don't think there's that many people in Vermont. I had to get a dig at Vermont. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
I've never been to Vermont, but it looks like a fine state.
It is a nice state.
Is it the Granite State?
No, that would be New Hampshire. We're the Green Mountain State.
Green Mountain State. Thank you.
I always thought New Hampshire was the gung ho state from their license plate.
Yeah, the live free or die.
Live free or die.
Yep. It's fun. You cross over the border and nobody's wearing motorcycle helmets, and they're selling fireworks everywhere. It's actually pretty nice.
They're taking that or die part pretty seriously, I guess.
Very.
So PA is halfway there. In PA, you don't have to wear a helmet, but you can't buy fireworks if you're a Pennsylvania resident in the Commonwealth. Non-residents can buy fireworks.
Pays to have dual citizenship.
It's bizarre.
That is bizarre.
So would you next year, will you be going to the British Invasion with your own vehicle?
At this point, it's still looking a little questionable whether I'll have it drivable or not. But I would love to.
You have 11 months to find a trailer.
Yes. I might be able to bring a partially rolling chassis on a trailer. See how far that gets me.
This isn't one of those events where you get people to show up with their spanners and finish it off for you, is there?
It's not.
That could be a cool
almost
thing.
all the vehicles are in mint condition. The Land Rovers, not so much. It was nice to see a good patina on the Land Rovers.
I have to say, a Land Rover in it with good patina to me is mint.
I agree.
I'd have to say, actually, I would say it the other way around. A Land Rover in mint condition is useless.
Yes.
Or you spent a lot of money in order to make it better than factory.
Right, at which point you're not going to do anything with it, so it's useless.
You'll drive it on the road, but you'll only take it to Home Depot. That's as close as you get to going to off-roading.
Correct.
Well, you'll have to we'll have to get Jim McCree on the show, and you can debate that with him, because all of his are absolutely immaculate. And he had his there this year, and I think he won a number of the places for Land Rover as well.
Good for him.
I know last year he got first and second. First for his 57 Series 1 and second for his, I think 62 2A station wagon. So yeah, his are nice. He has a the Series 1, the Series 2A. He's currently in the process of restoring a Series 3. He also has a D90, a NAS one, and what else? The county edition of the Range Rover, the 2014.
So does he bring his own podium from which to sweep all the awards?
Pretty much. Oh, and he has his Series 1 electric golf cart conversion for the kids. So that's a lot of fun. But there are actually quite a few Land Rovers. He probably only had an eighth of the Land Rover presence. Less than that, but sizable.
That's still significant.
It is. No, he there were actually quite a few. There were probably about 10 or 12 series Land Rovers. There was one 101 forward control. There was probably a dozen or so of random Range Rovers, a G4 Disco 2. There were a few Series 2s for sale as well. So yeah, there was a decent amount of Land Rovers. I think there was actually one 130, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's impressive.
Yeah, totally. Lots of other beautiful, absolutely beautiful British cars. Obviously, my namesake can't pass up the Morgans. There were 3 of the 3-wheel Morgans.
That's what you need. You need one of those.
I definitely need one of those.
Live free or die.
Absolutely.
Were you in fact really named after the car?
I was not, but I like to think so.
I had to ask.
Well, you can always lie. People might believe you.
What's that?
You can lie. People might believe you.
Yeah, totally.
Well, you repeat it enough.
Exactly.
It becomes true.
If I repeat it enough, I'll believe it, and then I don't have to lie.
Put it on the internet; it becomes true.
Yeah.
What was your favorite non-Land Rover at that event? Non-Land Rover vehicle?
Well, let me quickly switch to my photos here because I want to say that it was a Morris Minor 1000.
Ooh, the big one.
Yes, it was, and it was absolutely pristine. It was convertible. It was amazing.
Can we have a link to your photos? Is that a possibility?
Those ones aren't online yet, but I will have to post some and get them online.
Dude,
it was definitely.
So could we send you a self-addressed stamped envelope?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
My address is. And then actually my all-time favorite was not British, and it was in the parking lot. And the parking lot was half full of British vehicles as well that just didn't actually enter into the competition. But there was an absolutely beautiful yellow, must have been 1972 Volvo P1800 ES, so the station wagon.
In yellow. That's an odd color for that car.
Yeah, definitely. Probably not original.
I'm inclined to believe you there.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a fun event.
Well, moving to the other side of the Atlantic, as some of our listeners may know, I traveled to the United Kingdom and attended the Land Rover Owners International Show, of which there are one field report that is available in our podcast stream, and you can listen to some immediate observations that Steve and I had from the event.
Recorded live at the event.
It was recorded live at the event. We were
in a 110.
That's correct, in the camping area. So, but I will try to give a little bit of overall impressions and some other little interesting things from the event. One, it's huge. If you have attended any Land Rover event in the United States, and I've been to a number of them here on the East Coast, it's easily 20, 50 times bigger. It's massive. Where it takes place is on showgrounds, and it's an oval showground, which apparently they do other things there. It's an oval. There's a grandstand. They brought in dirt and had some off-roading capability there at the showgrounds, and if you look at some of the pictures and video that I put out, there's you can see I saw the EMLRA folks. They did a little demo, and they were running around the track, and then the bowler was there, and the actual bowler, and it was flying around the track. That was pretty cool, and actually jumping and getting some air. I have a shot of the bowler grabbing some air in one of my pictures.
Yeah, bowlers don't like to keep all four wheels on the ground.
And then they do a nice job of that. A really nice job of that. And so the event's big, and then around the oval is, on all four sides, is vendor displays, jumble sales, car parts, food, and then it also start kind of blending into club displays. There was the Loughborough, which Steve was here to make sure I say it correctly. They were very close to us. That was the first thing we saw was Loughborough. They had displayed all their vehicles.
I've watched enough Top Gear to know that one.
That was good. And they had a trailer there, and they had a 101, and they made that the center of the display. So on the back of this flatbed trailer, they pulled it off, turned it around, backed it in, and then all their other vehicles, they put the back wheels up on the trailer, and then they did it around in like kind of a U shape and made a big display. So there were a number, and there's a Series 2 club, there's a Series 1 club, there was EMLRA, Ex-Military Land Rover Association was there, the Lightweights were there, they have a club. There was...
every model has its own club.
Pretty much.
In the UK.
Pretty much, yeah, absolutely. The FC folks, I think they have a club. And I'm trying to think, there was another one I wanted to bring up, but I can't think what it was. And there were some also regional ones, so there would be different ones. Steve's a member of one of them, and I can't remember which one, but there were kind of regional clubs that show up too. And then around all that, so if you think of these concentric rings, and you can keep going out, so you have and then the third ring out is the camping, and that's on three sides. So there's camping, and that's where we were. We actually got on site and were able to camp, and then there you get a sign there, and there were a ton of Land Rovers. And for an American, where you don't see many on the road, and you're pointing them out everywhere as you drive, and to the point where my friends see a Land Rover, and then they tell me that they saw a Land Rover. They go, "Guess what I saw?" Which is really cool. Steve had to tell me to stop pointing because I. Like, look, Steve, look at that. Look, he goes, yeah, they're here all the time.
Yeah, you're going to wear your finger out pointing at everything.
Yeah, exactly. And but the one thing that Steve was surprised that I noticed was they're all the ones I saw were diesel. Every Range Rover, every Discovery, every new Discovery, Freelanders, you name it. They were I'd say 90% were diesels because they get better gas mileage
at least.
And the price of petrol is so high, especially in the premium. I want to say it's $10 a gallon. I think it's something along those lines. It was
sounds about right.
It was So of course, if you can afford $100,000, whatever that is in pounds, and probably even 100,000 pounds really for a Range Rover, you can probably afford the petrol. But
for a new one, yeah. But a lot of the older trucks, obviously, you don't see too many used ones running around with the petrol V8 in it,
right? Yes, so there's a ton of diesels and a ton of sticks too. You get I don't know that any of the Rangies were stick, but I know a lot of the Defenders, Discos that I saw were stick, and of course tons of Defenders.
Rangies were certainly available with a manual transmission,
right,
and a diesel, of course.
And they are available there.
So I guess if people over there are going to geek out about anything, it's going to be something with a V8 and an automatic in it, which is pretty much all you find over here.
They definitely geek out on the V8. They not the automatic so much, but definitely the V8. They think that's the bee's knees is a V8 for them. That's like their big thing. So they're all so that, and then on that third concentric ring, and on the other side, the fourth section is the car park, and we actually ventured into the car park because you can camp on site, but then there's people visit for a little bit, and they can in the car park, and there were just as many Land Rovers out in the car park.
Of course there are,
and it was it's where I saw a couple Range Rover Classics, and I took a picture of that.
Land Rover enthusiasts are going to drive to the Land Rover show in their Land Rover.
Absolutely. So some of the highlights that I saw was. We got on site Saturday morning, and the nice thing about camping is you're right there in the show. So you don't have to go through, you're already on site, if you will. So we can come and go as we please.
Yeah, you're there 24 hours a day.
That's correct. And you can come and go and walk through everything and come back. I think the first day, I think my Fitbit said we walked like 8 miles or something. It just felt, it was a long day. It was fun.
Good for you.
It was good for me. A lot of stuff to see. There were, I said vendors, and they were selling, like Land Rover stuff, but they were also selling parts. They had thing, and there were like off-roading and trail and overlanding related items you could buy. and there was a lot to see and go through. And if you wanted parts, it was certainly a really good place to go for, used parts, especially, obviously. A lot of good military stuff too that you don't ever see here. I did.
Yeah, that stuff's hard to get over here.
Absolutely. And there were trucks for sale too. They had show prices on these trucks, which the sale price, even if I'm sure this happens, because it happens here, the show price was significantly less for that vehicle. And I'm sure they jack up the main price before they come to the show, and it makes it seem like it's a discount, but even still nice prices, on those. There's at least half dozen military Defenders that would have been nice to buy at really good prices, like 5,000-6,000 pounds. This nice stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice stuff. I did pick up some camo for my for my Series 3 because that was a good price and something that could fit into my luggage on the way home. So I did.
Did you have to untangle it when you took it out of your suitcase?
I did not open it up, and it is not opened up yet.
Good plan.
Yes. But
I could imagine the customs agent waiting for you to untangle that as you're pulling it out of your suitcase, and they want to check in there.
Yeah, what is that? Yeah. Oh, it's this camo. It's camo. We walked out of our camping area, and we saw the Loughborough club, and then we ventured into things. So one of the things we saw immediately was prototype Series 1 prototype number 29. And it was in immaculate condition. I recall the guy that was driving it was not his. It was a friend or his employer. And it was in that standard kind of, lime green color. It was restored, and it had the canvas pass-through for your to open up the door. The door handle was on the inside, and you had the canvas. You had to put your hand through the little canvas slit and open up the door. Immaculate condition. It looked fantastic. The guy let me sit in it. I couldn't drive it, but at least sit in it. And, I took a bunch of pictures. We never saw it again. I guess, I don't know what happened. I don't know if they came, set stuff up and left. But we never saw that vehicle again. We got around a lot. So that was a neat thing to see. Just kind of a chance thing you saw. And there's, a ton of vehicles everywhere, throughout the location. A lot of ambulances, were there, especially for people who wanted to camp. And I took a bunch of those for you, Harold, as I know you would.
Pretty common thing to do with them over there is to convert them to campers.
Right. A lot of camel trophies. I'll have,
including a camel trophy Freelander.
Yes. Nothing wrong with that. They're capable.
Wouldn't be my first choice if I really wanted to do a camel trophy in earnest.
Me either. But they did it. Come on, man. That happens.
Well, I guess you need a sled to drag through the woods.
Yeah, that sometimes does happen. Yeah. EMLRA had a display, and I got to meet up with those folks and meet some of them, and some really nice examples there. They had the Wolf Defenders. Were
you able to meet some of the ones you'd been talking to online?
I did, actually. Yeah. Ian wasn't there. By the time I got around, and he had left, but I didn't get a chance to meet him. But I met some of the other gentlemen. Names escape me at the moment, but got to talk to them for a little bit. That was nice, and they're keeping things going. My favorite of that was the Defender 90 in Malta camo. I think it's Malta, and that's that kind of yellow sand and the green, and I just like that camo.
Yeah, it's a mixture of two different schemes. It's the green camo and the sand mixed together, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
So the center is sand and the wings are in green, which is in olive, which is the strange combination. Yeah,
I think they called it the Malta camo, and it was nice. It just kind of looks good.
Did they have any Berlin camo there?
I want to say no. What's that look like?
It's a bizarre pattern. It's all squares.
Oh, is it that technical?
Yeah, it's looks like an abstract painting. It's brown and black and yellow and
no. The thing one thing to point out on the Wolf Defender was they had vinyl covering everything of that vehicle on the inside, even including the dash, which
the dashboard condom.
Yeah, yes, it just covered everything. Which I thought was kind of neat to see. There were lightweights. There were Series 2s. There were Series 1s. Each other own club. The AA, which equivalent to our AAA, they had their own vehicles there, and they were all restored and looked fantastic. There was an actual Minerva, which is a Portuguese. What's the Minerva's? It's a Belgium. Sorry, it's a Belgium.
Was it
produced vehicle?
Yeah.
Those
are cool.
Belgian produced military Land Rover under a license from Land Rover. I want to say those were knockdown kits originally, and then I think they send some of the kits and then they build them there. That's my understanding.
Yeah, it looks to be based on the Series 1.
Yeah, it's got the straight sides, and so that was neat to see. Just because you're not going to see that, especially here. I don't know there's any here in North America.
Well, you don't see many Series 1s that were genuine Series 1s either. So
no, not at all. I said there were a lot of ambulances, a lot of converted ambulances for camping purposes. There was a Royal Navy livery Series 2 that was an outstanding example. Most of the cars were in good shape. Not a lot were showed up that were not necessarily in the best of shape.
Those would have been in the parking lot.
Probably, yes. Good point. Or camping, I guess. There was a Disco 3 that was lifted beyond measure. I could almost walk under the frame. That's how high this thing was lifted. It was just outrageous. I didn't completely understand it. EMLR.
That'd be fun till the first corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I can imagine how much that cost to move just in petrol or diesel, even just because it probably gets gallons per mile.
Probably.
Yeah. EMLRA did it.
And it's got to be really tough to decide how to even get it there. Do you want to drive it there, or do you want to try to trailer the thing?
Yeah, I don't think driving that on public roads would be a lot of fun.
It's probably not even legal.
That's a good question. I think it was. No, I mean there was a number plate on it. Whether it was registered and taxed, I don't know. But good question. It was certainly huge. There were a ton of 101s, and what's the Series 2 101s? What's the one
That's a 109 forward control, actually.
Okay.
It's built on a 109 chassis.
Okay.
It's actually a civilian forward control, as opposed to the 101 FC, which was military only.
Okay. Okay, didn't know that. Okay.
It was a limited run by special vehicles strictly for the military.
Okay. Yeah, they only produced so many for up to what? For like 10 years or something, up to like 83?
A couple thousand. Okay. Something like that. Not many. It was only in the mid-70s, actually.
Okay. EMLRA did a display, and so there were things in motion. That was pretty cool. And they just to show them. They did blues and twos. They had the two ambulances and one MP livery vehicle run around, and they ran their lights and sirens, which is pretty slick. There was a six-wheel vehicle. Excuse me, a six-wheeled Defender. I was part of a garage, from what I could tell, but it didn't move. I didn't see it move, but it was six wheels.
Somewhat of a rarity. I've seen quite a number of six-wheeled Range Rovers, but not many on Defenders.
I think that's maybe the only Defender I've ever seen that may have been six wheels. I don't know. There's a group in the UK that we don't particularly have here, and from my recollection, what Steve says is that government services, police in particular, they have decreased their how many they have and what they do, so they need help from civilians when there's a problem. And so up has risen the 4x4 response group, or Rover Rescue. So if there's a flood, especially, that's the kind of where I think they came to play. They will go and help only when called upon. And kind of help to rescue people. So there's a 4x4 group that does that.
There's a fair amount of that here, more than you might think, actually.
Is there really? Yeah. I've never seen that here. Huh. Okay. Is that a state-by-state thing?
Well, actually, it tends to be more private venture. We used to call them turtleneckers.
Oh.
Guys that show up in off-road vehicles and do search and rescue. And I used to do some search and rescue as a military auxiliary thing. Okay. But we weren't vehicle-based. We were ground pounders and air support. And then there would be the turtleneckers would come in, usually in Ford Broncos and Jeeps and that sort of thing. But
I didn't even know it was available ever a thing here.
Sort of run as a club. I'm not sure if they were compensated. I think it was strictly a volunteer thing.
Right. There were Camel Trophy vehicles there. There were G4 vehicles there, large gatherings of those. And something that was, I assumed this to be true, and it was, you had to see that it was there, but apparently somebody had the first Land Rover Series 1 that was ever provided to the Ministry of Defense, or actually, as their sign says, issued to the British Army. I assume it to be true. Didn't
Well, there has to be a first somewhere.
Exactly. And this vehicle was there. It was not in. It wasn't. It was partially restored. It was in decent shape. It wasn't in great shape. You can see some pictures that I have up on my Flickr account, which I will provide a link in our show notes. But it was in decent shape. It was neat to see. Just the fact that it was there and it's still around.
I think any ex-military Series 1 would be a cool thing to see. But if they have provenance that it was the first, that's cooler yet.
And the only provenance they had was a handwritten sign. But I know. One of my favorite shots, though, is of the number plate, which is 39 BCO2. A nice number plate.
That had been repainted by hand numerous times.
Yes. Which
that is a military format.
It would be. Yeah, starting with number. Yeah.
I'd have to decode with the BC what year that's from, but yeah, it's conceivable.
Series 1, it's got to be late 40s, early 50s. I wouldn't be surprised if it's probably 48 itself, because that's they probably provided one immediately to the British military.
Yeah, the question at that point would be: was this a general release vehicle, or was this just a sample that they sent for evaluation? I would think if it has a number plate, it's probably not the first one the military got their hands on.
Yeah, but
it's the first one they were allowed to use as general issue.
Right. Overall. To kind of sum up a little bit, everybody was very nice. It was a nice event. As I said, closest I can think is to take a little bit of MAR. There's no real off-roading, like you didn't go off on a trail ride, but Steve said there might have been that was a possibility.
I understand there was a park a few miles away that you could go to and do some off-roading.
All right.
Yeah, just sort of a couple of loops for a small fee.
Okay. So, yeah, take a MAR we have here and amp it up. I would suspect also something like the Land Rover owners, the National Rally takes place in the West in the United States. I suspect it's probably like that. And then, again, amp that up with a lot more trucks, a lot more people, a lot more vendors.
For those in the collector car hobby in the eastern U.S., you might identify with the Carlisle show or the Hershey show. This would be almost of that magnitude.
I would definitely think so. Yeah, and the nice thing is they had lots of parts. I mean, I picked up some stuff for you. It was nice to see. Neat place. So after that, I ventured over to the factory. I actually went to the Holy Ground in Solihull, and went on the factory tour and did the Land Rover experience. So I drove a 110 diesel 5-speed and got to drive that around the course. Fantastic. It was a lot of fun. That was enjoyable. They took you on a little bit of rock crawling, slant side, so you're kind of off camber. Then you're also went down to 50% grade. We did some water crossing. The one thing that I learned I didn't know that the vehicle had was it has an anti-stall technology. So you can you go down that 50% grade and they're like, take your feet off the pedals. And I says, don't worry, it'll be fine. And even going up a hill at 50 degrees, it doesn't stall. You have to force it to stall. That's like jamming on the brakes, your typical ways, or if, it gets into that lugging situation where it'll lug and then it'll die out. Didn't happen. Never lugged.
Not a Jetta.
Definitely not a Jetta. And that's a whole different kettle of fish. But that was really cool. That was fun. The factory tour, while the off-roading was fun, certainly it was neat to be in a Defender 110 doing that. The factory tour was impressive. Small number of people. They take you there, interestingly enough, on a Land Rover Defender 147. It's a 147-inch wheelbase. There's only 3 been made. They're specially built for the factory tour.
It's a 110 of the double stretch.
Yes, and they had to get the center doors, because there's 3 sets of doors on either side. They had to get the center doors from South Africa because they based this off of the Safari vehicles, Safari Tour vehicles they have, and they didn't have the doors, so they had to get them from there. So it was kind of cool. There's only 3 of them. They are not registered to be. They're not road legal. They're supposed to be limited to 20 miles an hour. They were diesel and stick, and so we toured around. That's how they got us from place to place. And I think then they held 9 people If I remember correctly, there was only 3 of us on the tour, but they said they would take 9 at a time on the tour.
The standard 110 is classified as a 12-passenger vehicle. You ought to get more than 9 in this thing.
You would think.
Maybe 9 plus the front seat passengers. That might make more sense.
Yeah. Well, there was there was the driver and me, and then we had 2 people in the middle, so in the center thing.
So the truck was horribly underutilized.
It was. Yeah, wonderful turning radius. But the tour, since there were only 3 of us, and they knew I was a Defender fan, they said they normally don't go on the Defender factory production area, but they did. They took us there, and what amazed me was how close you could get. I was like close to, Harold and I are probably at arm's length away. What's that, about 2.5 feet from Harold? That's how close you were getting to the production of the vehicles. I mean, as long as you stayed in the yellow lines and stayed with your guide, people were going by. They didn't care if you were there or not, and just walking around you. So as long as you didn't get in their way, if you will. So you're very close to things. It wasn't too noisy. It was loud, but it wasn't super noisy, except for when we went into the metal stamping building for the aluminum.
It's impossible to stamp body panels quietly.
Yeah, they have this massive, massive stamper.
Well, it's impossible to stamp body panels without a large machine.
Yes. They said they dug down and I think poured I assume a bunch of concrete or went to bedrock, and so that it's so the building doesn't shake and doesn't shake the surrounding neighborhoods, because they are butting up in a residential neighborhood. I mean, they're like, me to you, they're in a residential area, so in Sully Hall there. So they were trying to be nice to their neighbors and not have all the ground go, when that thing went off. So maybe there's dampers there too, probably, I'm guessing. But anyways, so the Defender, and they do 75 a day. They only do them on their first shift, which is the morning shift, Monday through Friday. It's very labor intensive. That's the thing. That's my big takeaway from that. Extreme labor intensive. A lot of people doing lots of things. They start with the chassis comes in, and then they build the center posts around the bulkhead. That's the first thing that gets on, and then they start adding things onto that. And it's all very labor intensive. People are sticking things together, and they're tacking them together, and they're screwing them on. And so there's a lot of labor intensive.
That's exactly how you do it in my shop too. If you're doing a frame over, you start with the frame and you set the bulkhead, and then you move your way out from there.
And so then was the truck gets built, and I think they said it takes 8 hours to build a truck, something like that. But how do you do 75 a day? I don't know. But it was a very slow moving line that moves, and there's a number of guys jumping in and out, and women too, building these things as they go through. And each has a build card on it, so you can take the sheet and see what they're building. It could be a 130, it could be a 110, and it could be it'll be in red, then it'll be in white, and it'll be like 3 white trucks, and then it'll be a black one. And so they're all different colors, different specs.
You got to read the sheet as you go.
And
wow, shades of 1940.
Yes,
that's how it used to be done here too.
Yeah, and it's still, I guess, effectively being done that way, which makes you think. You can see why I think this is maybe the actual reason maybe why they're changing out the Defender, because at some point you can't do that anymore. It's difficult to do that anymore.
It's hard to do that and stay competitive unless you're building Rolls Royces.
Right. And also I think meet tolerances that people are expecting now, with how close robots can get things and how quickly they can do them. To ramp up production of the Defender, while I'm sure they could do it, you would mean adding another shift and getting a bunch of people who are specialized and know those jobs. So it's hiring all those people, it's getting them up to speed, and so it's problematic to ramp up production if they wanted to.
It's also very costly, and especially to get it up to the magnitude when you consider that 75 a day is 10 an hour, so it's every 6 minutes there's one coming off the end of the line, and compare that with I think the average now is 42 seconds at a properly efficient factory.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's there's a big order of magnitude difference. It's just simply adding shifts is not enough to get to that level.
Right. And so that you need to. I think that's something that they've not talked about, that you need to factor into why is a Defender being replaced. It's manufacturing has achieved a certain level where maybe we can't manufacture that way anymore.
Well, I mean, I think there's really the two big issues is the safety regulations and the fact that it is very costly to make them.
Yep. So if you want to see old school factory production. You need to get to the factory by the end of 2015 because that's my understanding when the Defender will no longer be produced.
It's got a year.
So you've got a year to get there, and I would recommend it. It's expensive. I can't guarantee, or not again, but I can't guarantee that you'll see the Defender being produced because they said there's only a small number of us, and they normally don't do that. Is that true or not? I don't know if they were just making that to make us feel special, or if they really do that. But if you can, and you can get there and you can see the Defender being built, it was impressive. It was neat to see. A lot of people flying around, and they have DHL is their parts provider, and they've got parts, and there's so many they have to have at certain times. So when the stock gets down to 8, they bring in another pallet and they replace it, and it has to be that pallet at that time because that's how many they need for that specific thing to be built. So
JIT. Just in time.
Exactly, absolutely, just in time. And they've got that all worked out. And so DHL's run around delivering on little carts, and they're delivering parts all over the place while the Land Rover workers are putting the vehicle together. On the other, so as it's coming out, they do quality testing on the vehicle. There's a sticker in the windshield that tells you where the vehicle's going. I saw Denmark, Britain, Australia, France, Germany, Canada, Russian Federation. There was no U.S.
That's when you need a Sharpie and to start writing USA on them to see what happens.
Well, I thought maybe the Canadian ones. I mean, just a little more south. Come on, brother. Yeah. But so they were, and then they take the vehicle and they put it through what we call a car wash, and they do high pressure wash on the car. It takes about 5 minutes, I think, and they put a bunch of water on it at high pressure to see if the vehicle is watertight. And I was impressed to see that. They also run the vehicle.
That will be the last time it will ever be shown to be watertight.
Probably. Certainly. Yeah, I don't think my series was ever
Once
watertight.
it passes that test, they remove the seals and ship it.
That's right. And they also run the vehicle. I want to say 50 miles. They have the rollers there, and they run the vehicle for 50 miles to make sure it's all together and doesn't shake apart, and the engine's fine. So they
make sure it can hold oil for that long.
They can hold oil for that long, and the rear main seal's okay. So they do that. They do other quality checking. They pull vehicles off, and if they can do the paint fixes right there on site, and they pull them off into a side area, and then they'll do some paint fixes. And it happened. There will just maybe one area is blemished or it didn't do right, and they'll go in and they'll repaint it. That was kind of again.
That's fairly common for factories.
I would think so, but it was just still neat to see that it's happening and they're doing it. There's quality production going on, and they're checking things. There's always people running around checking stuff to make sure it looks good. There's a little bit of not much robotic operation for the Defender line. There were some to bring in they mate the transmission with the engine, and that's on a overhead crane. Not really, but maybe overhead a robot's better. That flies it in, and then they drop it down. They put it into the chassis, and then it goes on. So there might be another robot close to that being a robot. That was about it. And there was something else. So they do the water testing, they do the quality control, then they ship the vehicle out, and the vehicles are sent. I think every 3 or 4 hours they load up a couple car trailers, and they ship them to to ports or wherever they need to go. And so there's not a lot of vehicles on site. They're mostly, and this is not just Defenders, but all the other Land Rovers made on site, Range Rovers, Sports, and Discoveries. Immediately on a truck, gone. So they have these trucks constantly there, and they get them out of town as quick as possible. So I guess my guess is that way they're not. That's part of the just in time, and also they can have more space there for the factory and not take it up with parked cars.
Well, given our discussion earlier about demand versus supply, I would think they really don't need to hold on to them.
That's true, but there isn't a lot of excess land around there anymore because they've added the Jaguar. They're going to build Jaguars on site. They're going to I think they're going to start building their own engines. I think we've had a story about that in the past, and I think that may or may not be done on site. I apologize, I can't remember that one. And of course, they're opening up a factory in China that's going to be opened up shortly, right. So they'll be meeting the Chinese demand. But that was the Defender. Really neat. I spent 3 hours on the tour. Then they took us to see the stamping plant. Then we also saw Range Rovers and Discoveries being built, and they're built together. And then they So you might see a Range Rover Sport, a Defender, Disco, Range Rover, and they're just going together. A lot of white ones, by the way, Harold. Probably to meet Asian demand. Thing we did learn is they have a special capability. If you are buying a Range Rover, you can go pick it up at the factory. They will pick you up they'll pick you up in a Range Rover limousine from your hotel, bring you to the factory. They will give you food. They will give you a presentation. They will give you a factory tour, and then they will pull the curtains away, and they will reveal your Range Rover.
Okay.
I think that's called. And you pay $1,000, £1,000 for the privilege.
I wonder if that could be negotiated for other stuff.
I don't know. I don't think so. I got the impression it was strictly for Range Rovers. That was like a special, signature level kind of activity.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So that was the tour. Very interesting, especially for the Defender part. Then talk about the Land Rover experience and the driving part. That was neat. I also went to the Heritage Motor Center, which is we basically call a museum. Lots of British vehicles. That's near, I think, what used to be RAF Gaydon. Isn't it right next to? I know there's an airport there, or at least a runway, and I think that used to be RAF Gaydon. So
yeah, it was. In fact, a lot of that now is the corporate campus for Jaguar Land Rover.
Yes, because you can also there's a Land Rover experience that takes place there. I found out. I didn't realize. I thought they were the same. They're not. The one at the
separate experience.
You can pay to just pay a lesser amount to drive a specific vehicle for a specific amount of time, or you can also pay to drive Heritage vehicles too. So you could. I don't know what the Heritage ones were.
Ooh.
I did see a Series 1, so that was floating around. So you could do that. The museum itself, the center itself, has some interesting Land Rovers in it. There was one of the Defender 130s that was used in Skyfall. It's all bashed up and broken, which is pretty slick. There was Huey, the very first production Land Rover, is there in nice regalia. Same color as the prototype that I saw. Actually, the prototype, now that I think of it, looked a lot nicer. It looked as nice as Huey. There was that one-off that we saw in Graham Aldis's videos, his 65th anniversary video, where they had the one-off of the tow truck. It was there at the center. That I guess it looks like it was based on a 101 maybe, and I think it was based off a 101, but they turned it into a tow truck and they ended up using it at the factory themselves for a number of years.
Okay.
And there's that track, that's Cuthbertson, if I'm not mistaken, that has the track series truck that was there. They're
a Series 2 were converted to tracks.
Yeah, and it's the gray one, which you've the pictures. I think there's only ever one built. I don't know, but it's the one you've seen. It's there at the center.
There were actually quite a few built, but yeah, that's a nice one. But
yeah, they have an example of it there.
And there, Pink Panther was there, and then there was the Tickford Series 1 Tickford, which I didn't know this even what it was or existed until I read the article, the little card next to it.
Fulfilling the demand for a luxury utility vehicle.
And they wanted to build something that had capacity to hold people, and it was built to a higher quality, oddly enough.
Since Range Rovers didn't exist, they built a fancy Series 1.
Series 1. It's exactly what it was. And the some special pricing kicked in, some taxation kicked in, so as a result, it nearly doubled the price of the original Series 1, and they said they only built like 62. I think there's only 20 left.
Tickford conversions are always big money.
And the neat thing about it is, in the rear, the tailgate went pillar to pillar. So, like in a series truck, you've got those two little panels on the side where the gate is. This one went pillar to pillar, and it was a split folding tailgate, which you see on Range Rovers and Discoveries now. That split folding tailgate.
Well, that was available on series trucks for years too.
Well, maybe it started with the Tickford, from what I'm guessing, because the Tickford was one of the first that I suspect ever had that, and I have pictures of that on my Flickr side, which I will share in the show notes. And of course, as we're doing this, the picture that I want to see is not showing just yet, but you can see the split folding tailgate there, and you can see it goes pillar to pillar.
Yeah, that part is Tickford unique, but as far as the split opening, sometimes called a clamshell, that was fairly standard to the series truck line. They used the same tailgate,
Well,
and they put the hard top on it, and then the upper half just went between the roof and the tailgate.
so did the Tickford come before they had that
I'm
clamshell in the
not
Series 1?
certain of
Okay.
that.
I'm wondering if Tickford came up with that concept and maybe it was then used in other.
We'd have to research that. I'm not sure.
We actually have to do work.
Yeah,
What on the
sure.
podcast? So, and they also.
Hey, I do research every month. I don't know about you.
I did actually. I flew to the United Kingdom and did some research. And they also had one of the first Range Rovers was there on a special display in the. They have an upper gallery, and they had the very first Range Rover, the one in blue. Apparently, there's three different colors, and that's the first three Range Rovers.
It's a two-door.
It is in fact a two-door, very Spartan on the inside, which not that luxury thing.
Well, it was a big step up mechanically. It was very luxurious. And the fact that
compared to the series of the time.
The fact that it had door latches and windows that went up and down, that was a luxury upgrade.
And carpeting.
And, well, there you go.
That was big.
People weren't as hard to please back then.
So, and finally, and this was just a odd thing that occurred. So I was leaving on Wednesday night, and Steve joined me at the Betsy Wynn, which is I apologize if you're from that area, but it's kind of out of the way, non-tourist area in Swanbourne, which is in the Midlands in England. And it's kind of a very quiet street and a very quiet area and a very quiet part of the UK. And we're at the Betsy Wynn, which is a really neat pub, just down a short walk from the Cherry Tree B&B. And we had dinner, and we're leaving, and let's head back to the B&B. And we look in the car park, and there were Moore's Miners there. And Steve himself was floored because he says that Moore's Miners, you never see more than one at a time. And there were four. There were four Moore's Miners. There must have been their own little car show, their own little gathering. They were all excellent examples. There was a blue one, a white one, a gray one, and they were all. And there's even a convertible. I think there was one more, but I only got pictures of three. I think there were four. And
probably a local club of some sort of enthusiasts that just get together once a month and have a meal and some beer. And
I was
go back to somebody's house and watch videos.
That's right. They're Moore's Miners on the road. Yes, so that was neat to see. Really good cars. Neat to see them. And there was one. I did see one at the Heritage Motor Center. They had an example there, but to see them actually out and about, that was pretty cool. It's always good to see heritage vehicles.
I agree. It's probably not common to see them more than one at a time. However, even just seeing one is an easier thing to do in England than it is here.
Yes, and the fact that Steve, local, was amazed, I think that was tells you something. He says you normally don't see that. And actually, something special for you, Morgan. I did make sure I got a picture, even though the didn't come out the best. A 1939 Morgan.
I did see that. That was very nice.
It was a nice example, and number plate STU334. We should start calling you Stu. Maybe not.
Mind you, it's hard to tell the difference between a 1939 and a 1993 Morgan.
I would beg to differ. The Aero 8 is.
Yeah, I know. Well, the Aero 8's a little easier to distinguish, but
yes,
they still definitely have the retro styling.
Oh, absolutely. I love them. I should have had you order me one while you were there.
Yeah, get right on that.
Bring it home in your suitcase.
Yes. I did look for Morgan memorabilia, and there wasn't any. And there was MG stuff, there was Jaguar stuff, there was Land Rover stuff, but I was going to get you a little keychain or something, but I couldn't find any Morgan materials. I'm sorry.
Oh, Morgan is like a level above most of those in terms of costs, so I'm not surprised that there's not a whole lot of memorabilia.
But I thought there'd be at least a sticker or something. They had stickers for everything else, but something like that. But they didn't have a Morgan one. Neat thing they did have at the museum at the center there was you can get a replica tax disc for your vehicle. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, especially with the paper.
You can pick your year, is what I understand too.
You can pick the year, and they'll give you the right style, and they will even hand write it if it's the right time period for that. So I might do that for my Defender. I think that might be neat to do.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you have a vintage vehicle and you want a vintage tax disc, and you can also get the neat holders. They have the brass ones, the chrome ones, and
get your tax disc holder while you still can.
That is true, because as of October 1st, 2014, you no longer have to display your task disc in the United Kingdom.
So the fancy holders are going to be an obsolete accessory.
Yes.
Now, do they do those through mail order? Because I know they
Yes.
do all their official documentation through mail order as well.
That is correct. I did get a flyer, and I think I think you can do it online too.
Their gift shop is on their website. You can go there and buy things directly, including your research services. You can actually purchase through the gift shop.
And I think that's where I saw the flyer for that, and I think it's online too, so you can check that out. If I remember, I'll try to put a link to the museum. So
Actually, they were promoting that on their Facebook page recently as well.
Oh, yeah? Oh, okay, cool, neat museum. If you like cars, you like British vehicles, they had the very first Rover vehicle, which is a bicycle, was there.
The Rover safety bicycle,
and it was there. So I took a picture of that.
That was the first company to manufacture bicycles with both wheels the same size. Hence the safety bicycle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was their deal.
And
I did not know that.
I did not
That's
know that
cool.
Either. Yeah. And they had, I took a picture of the Lucas sign they had there, so I thought
Was it dripping?
It was not. But it might, maybe in the picture there'll be a little ghost image. I don't know. So.
Was it completely lit?
It was the sign. It was in a case. There was no, there was of lighting.
There was no functional lighting upon it.
That's right. So that was my trip to the UK. My pictures. I'll have a link to the pictures, and maybe next time, Steve, if he has other things he wishes to throw in there, he can. I want to thank Steve, by the way. He picked me up at Heathrow, drove me up to Peterborough, and took care of me in that regard, getting me there and getting me situated. And that was a big help. And
did he let you keep your green oval name sign?
No, I didn't get my. No, he kept that.
What a cheap bastard!
I know. Yeah. Well, you know, which was a little funny story. I needed a tire strap for my Series 3, for the military Series 3, to hold the tire strap down because mine's rotted away and almost perished. And so I ordered one ahead of time. He ordered it, shipped it to his place. He had it, and it didn't show up until the Monday after I got there. So I didn't see him. Sunday we got back. I went to the B&B. He had to go to work. And then we met that Wednesday for dinner. I'm flying out on Thursday. And
your last supper, if you will.
Last supper. And we go out and we see the Morris Miners. And he goes to his truck, and I wave him by. And I says, okay, I'm going to go back. I went back into the restaurant, into the pub to have another pint, because it was a very short walk to the B&B. And I was going to finish up my field report for the day. And 10 minutes later, he shows back up, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And he goes, I almost forgot this. And he hands me the tire strap. It's all that way, all that time, and all that effort. And
to save postage.
Save postage on sending this thing across the pond, and he almost forgot it. So it's a little fun story. But Steve's a great guy, and I think we're going to try to get him to come here to the United States and visit, and we'll kind of repay his hospitality. So I don't know if he's going to get up to Vermont, but you never know, Morgan. If he does, you're going to have to help him out.
Just tell him
absolutely.
It's the Arctic Circle, and he'll go.
Yeah.
He at least is aware of how big the United States is, and it's just people. I'm going to go visit D.C., New York, and Miami, and I'm like, yeah, of course you are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, stock up on your frequent flyer miles. It's possible, but you're not driving it.
You can, but you're going to be here a while.
Yeah, unless you got a lot of time off.
Mm-hmm. I did get to drive when I was there. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed driving. That was driving the UK was fun. It's different. The one interesting little thing about driving in the UK is this: they got the speed cameras, and as much as I'm sure most people don't like them, I don't like them, but they work in the construction zones, in the work areas, because they average them, so you have to make sure you're doing 50 in their construction zones, and it worked. People were doing 50.
So if you know where the cameras are, you can haul ass for a bit and then sit and park for a little bit, scrub some time off.
Yeah. And I think that does happen. I was cruising at 70-ish if the Vauxhall Corsa would go 70, and I should have flogged it more. And even the rental people, when I got back, said, you should have flogged it more. I'm like, gee, thanks for letting me know. Anyways, I'm in the middle lane. There's a 3-lane motorway, and I look over on my right, and I see something, and 2 seconds later, this Audi A6 possibly went blowing by. He had to be doing 90, maybe 100, and I was doing 70, 65.
What do they have for speed limits over there?
The national speed limit is 70. They're talking about raising it to 80, I guess, in certain areas. So.
I would think on the big motorways they could relax it.
I don't think they do.
I would think they could, is what I'm saying.
You don't see a lot of police. I didn't see a lot of police out because they think they rely on the speed cameras to. That's how they do their enforcement.
Well, if the police are still driving Vauxhall Astra diesels, they pretty much have to rely on the cameras otherwise, because they haven't got a chance.
Good point. Yes, but I didn't see a lot of police on the roads. I think because they do rely on the cameras. So that was a visit, and that was the past events. We should now move to upcoming events. And currently, an event that has already taken place, but Steve can't be here to talk about it. He went to the Adventure Overland show in the United Kingdom, and I know he had a good time at that, and he has a lot to talk about. He did a field report for us, and it's available. It's field report number 4, and it's out already if you want to listen to it. But we'll have him talk more next time he joins us on the podcast. Also upcoming is the Overland Expo show here in the United States. And Harold, I think you're going to tell us about that.
Yeah, that's actually happening this weekend, and I don't know a lot about it, but it covers more than just the vehicular overlanding stuff. There's a lot of gear there and people talking about techniques and bushcrafting techniques and survival gear, that sort of thing. Our friends Mike and Scooter, they work in the custom knife business. In fact, they're down there promoting their knives for the event. So we're hoping to get them here to talk about it once they get back. I did see somebody put something cute on Facebook. They took a video of a late model Range Rover in the parking lot that was on something slick, and their stock tires were spinning, and it was just sitting there, basically just all four spinning. Along comes a Volkswagen van just at idle, just putting right past them. Embarrassing and funny at the same time.
There you go. So, and this is the Overland Expo East. Is this smaller or bigger than the Overland Expo that takes place, I think, out in the West? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have a link to the website, but it is going on right now in Fletcher, North Carolina, or Asheville. Oh, it's at the private Taylor Ranch in Fletcher, North Carolina, which is near Asheville, which, by the way, is the craft brew capital of the United States of America. Asheville, North Carolina, if you're curious.
That's down in the Panhandle.
And I believe that this is the first year.
Yes, first year in the East. This is the East version of it. I want to say it's a little smaller than the regular Overland Expo show, which I think takes place in Arizona or New Mexico.
Well, one would think if it's their first year, it's probably smaller.
Yeah, right. So. And then next is the Metal Dash Weekend.
Yes, and this is another one that has just passed. It was the last weekend of September, so the 26th through the 28th. It's a small event in Petersham, Massachusetts, and so it's mostly for series rovers. There were a few defenders there this year. For looking at the photos, they sort of just do a little bit of green laning, part swaps, stuff like that. Traditional camping on location. So looks like a fun event. I believe that one of our panelists from our previous episode, Nick Danger, was going to attend. So we'll have to see if he made it there and what his take on it was.
I believe they now accept padded dash, do they not? Or aren't they padded dash friendly?
They are padded dash friendly.
They're at least padded dash tolerant.
Yes.
Are they curious? Well, pretty much, as you can see, this is kind of getting towards the end of the show season for, I think, in the Northern Hemisphere, as the
until you get into the winter romp and the winter classic and things like that.
That's right. But it's part of the slowdown. There's
right.
a lot of events, and then you get kind of into the winter months and it slows down. So
right, people just don't go out as much when it's cold out.
Actually, our Bill Fischel went to the National Rally. We should talk to him.
We need to get him on the podcast.
Talk about the National Rally. I know he took his drone with him, and I saw some pictures of that. Yeah. He has. I think it's like a Series 3 made it. I know he spent a lot of time and effort
on a fresh chassis.
That's right.
I saw quite a number of the construction pictures that were posted on Facebook.
I'll have to do that. Get him, try to talk to him about the National Rally. That'd be cool. And speaking of upcoming shows, we're going to get Jeff Aronson back onto the podcast. He's interested in joining us, and I want to get Ben from Fun Rover. I tried to hook up with him in the UK, but it was just didn't work. And also, I should, now I think of it, a special shout out to 80 and Louise. They are up near Leeds in the UK, and I went and saw them. And he has a Defender Wolf edition, very nice vehicle.
Is his an actual Wolf?
I believe it is. Yeah, I think he told me it was a Wolf.
Interesting.
Nicely.
I thought it was just a regular 110. Interesting.
No, I think it's a Wolf. It's nicely kitted out. He's got the communications equipment and inside and out, and it's a nice truck. It's really nice. They're nice people. They took me out to dinner and went to the pub and had a good time and good chat, and they're nice people.
80's a detailed guy, so I can imagine his truck is probably quite nice.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's yes. So hopefully, and I was encouraging him to come to the United States too, and we could take care of them.
He's been hinting about that for a while now.
Yeah,
I think
exactly. Yeah,
and I think he's working on saving his money for that.
80, the trip to the United States, I believe, is an 8-hour flight, and then back it's a 6-hour flight. So if you can handle 8 hours in the air, I think you'll be all right. Because he asked me about that, and I was like, "Oh, it's only 6 going, because you get the tailwind, but on the way back, it's or on the way to the United States, you get headwind, so it's like an 8-hour flight." So that's coming up on the on the podcast. We're going to try to get some other folks to join us, and we will talk about other events coming up and other interesting things. So I think this brings a close. Episode 18, Series 2. Sorry, I lost the first one. It was very exciting. We were in the B&B. It was interesting, and Steve made fun of me. So that's probably the real reason why I lost it, right? Because Steve made fun of me, and we didn't want to have
You were
that.
Destroying evidence.
I was distraught. All right. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening to the 18th edition of the Centresteer podcast. We look forward to talking with you next month.
The Centresteer theme song, Sunset Rider by the Tritons, is available from Video Musicality. Check it out at music.video.com.
Steve said I could use my British accent. Can I use it now?
Go for it.
The British... No, that doesn't make any sense. Right. British
Never
invasion...
mind.
No, okay.
Never mind. It's not working.
You've already
It's not working.
butchered it.
Abort.